Hello everyone, you are on the Artefacto channel, where renowned artists showcase their skill and share secrets with those eager to improve their painting abilities. My paper is wet. I add this light for the horizon. Yeah, I use more pigment. Most of time I use a strong pigment and less water, especially when I do the wet on wet technique. The paper is wet and I don't need to add more water on my brush. Just I use a pigment on my brush. Okay, right now I use a little bit permanent primary yellow, little bit primary yellow here and here. This part is a third part of the paper here. I want to add a sun. Okay, I use permanent yellow orange, little bit warmer, a little bit warmer color. I add here, here, and now I use a permanent red light. Yeah, permanent red light I use. You can see the colors blend together, light and warmer. Now I use lavender. And I add the lavender, the sky is more violet, not uh, greenish, because I use lavender and red in this part. Yeah. You can see I use very strong pigment to paint the clouds. I use lavender, permanent red light, and I think ultramarine blue, little bit ultramarine blue I add. Yeah. Yes. This is very strong pigment and less water I use. My paper is wet and I can paint this clouds here. Pay attention to the perspective of the clouds. Here is the light and the shadow and the darkest color, the clouds is going to this area. Very good perspective. You can see the clouds is going to this side. Yeah. Wet on the technique. I do see the clouds here is very important. The perspective and this light here. If your brush is very wet, the water comes back to the paper, and you should use very strong pigment and less water. Pay attention, very important. Yeah, this is very simple actually. It's not hard to paint wet on wet technique. And yeah, this is enough. The light in the sky and the clouds and the light to show the sun. And yeah, the clouds is going to this area. Okay, now I use only permanent yellow orange. This part, because of the light from the sky, I prefer to add these colors to show the branches in distance here. You can see because of this light, I prefer to use very warm orange. And here, this side to show the branches or trees I prefer to use more lavender, little bit permanent orange. You can see. Or if you permanent orange, it's look like the greenish color in distance. I change the green color. I don't like to add this green in distance. I prefer to do violet. Yeah, violet is better because of the sky. I prefer to use the background. It's better to be violet. Lavender, ultramarine blue, and permanent red. Yeah, this violet is better than green. Yeah. You know, it's good harmony between the clouds and the branches in this stand. Because of this, I prefer to do violet. Yeah, mix of ultramarine blue, permanent red, lavender, and to show the very light, I add only uh, permanent orange, permanent yellow. Yeah, here I add violet and the same. You can see only this part. Yeah, actually, when I use this orange, the color from here is look like the greenish color, but here is more violet. Yeah, you can see very interesting contrast uh, between the light here. Yeah, actually, this brush is from her and I didn't introduce that. Most of the time I use this calligraphy brush. Yeah, sorry, I changed the brush. This calligraphy brush, because of the hair, is very, very useful for me. For example, to paint a very tiny branches, I prefer to use this brush. Yeah, it's very useful brush. Okay, some branches in distance here because of the light. Very detailed here. Okay, now if you enjoyed painting with me, I invite you to join my free workshop where I will show even more watercolor techniques. Follow the link in the video description and I will be happy to see everyone. Let's continue painting. Uh, my paper is dried. It's not completely dried actually. Again, I'm going to add the water here. And I'm going to paint the same light in the river. At first, I use John Blériant, a little bit yellow ochre. The light here is very important. Now I use a little bit cadmium orange and permanent yellow. And now I use permanent red. Good. It's too much water. Okay, I add a little bit ultramarine blue, permanent red, and lavender. Show the light here. A little bit more lavender. Yeah, this part, because of the light, is very important. I very happy to use this calligraphy brush. This one is very useful for the watercolor. Good. You can see uh, there's warm colors in the see it's very nice mix of orange, lavender, and red color. I prefer to keep light here very. Uh, if you want to show the ripples in, in the watercolor, you should wait for your paper a little bit, for your water a little bit absorb in your paper. And you should use a strong pigment. Uh, and after that, you can add this ripples. Right now, you can see it's very shiny. This part is very shiny. And I should wait a little bit to absorb water on my paper. And after that, I add the ripples. In the reference photo in this side, I did the branches, the trees, reflection in the water. And for this painting, I prefer to show this side of the paper very light. I think it's more interesting here because it's very far. I don't need to show the trees reflection in the water. And I prefer to keep this part of the paper lighter and this part because of the sun. And sometimes you can see that the warm colors around the light is more warmer, more brighter than the sky because it's the water reflection, it's the sun, it's the light reflection in the water, and it's very normal. Maybe the colors that you use for the sea more warmer, more different, more colorful because of the it's the sea. I prefer to splash in colors. Sometimes on my painting, it's like a very good technique to show the some texture. For example, light texture I splashing here, but I don't want to splash more. Just let me add a little bit orange on it. Yeah, or here I splash some light to show the grasses. Pay attention. When I want to splash color here, I keep my brush like this to splash in this side. If I want to splash some colors here, I keep my brush like this style. If I want to splash some colors here, I keep my brush like this style. Pay attention to the perspective you want to splash in the colors. Okay. And just I add more details here to show some branch. Yeah, I think, guys, my painting on is done. Uh, yeah, This is like gondola, but it's not gondola here. It's like the Chinese boat. Yeah. Actually, in my reference photo, I did the boat here, but here, I said the reference photo, I add this shadow, this reflection from the background here. But now when you see this one, it's more distance. And this one, I prefer to do to be like this, to show the distance. This light help us to go to the depth of the painting, but this part, you can see, it's not very, very far. I prefer this one. Yeah. And yeah, the light in here is more far, more fade. And this one is different. I don't want to say which one is better. I don't know. You should judge this. Actually, the watercolor is this. I can't paint the same watercolor again. The watercolor is like this. You create all the time different, and I like this. Okay, I add a little bit boat reflection in here. The background boat here. Yeah, this one for the back. Okay, guys.
I have a question for you. It's a little abstract.
Yeah.
If you have one piece of advice for a watercolor artist, what is it?
Can you explain about the...
So one tip, one only if you have one advice, tip, or guide.
Yeah.
What would you say to me if I'm saying I want one piece of knowledge?
Yeah, I understand. It's better to, after a sketch, after you learn a sketch, you don't have about the sketch. It's better to paint wet on wet technique and try to paint sky without pay attention to what's happened at the end. Just try to wet on wet and use the more thick color to use a success color, so use a strong color. This practice is very helpful for our students. Before you paint, it's better to try to paint wet on wet technique. After that, you can do it better.
Okay, so I'm gonna go wet on wet. I'm gonna be bold with my colors, and I'm not gonna worry about. I'm not going to worry about, oh, I got to make it great now. I got to change this. I got to change that.
Yeah.
I just want to trust the process and go with the flow. Okay. So the other question is your palette that you use in all of your videos. It's very beautiful, the palette of colors. Can you tell us where you got it from?
You need to introduce all of my colors to you.
No, just the name of the palette, the brand.
Yeah, the brand of my palette is Shinhan, and this is a very good palette, and you can put the colors inside your palette. And this palette is in very special palette for painting. Yeah, and after you paint, you can clean it very easily, and after that you can use it. Yeah.
Okay, so the paint is in tubes, and you put the paint into the palette. The tubes are all individual and different brands, I guess. Yeah. Okay, guys, if you have any questions for Javid, now is your moment to ask. Okay. Question. Vicky asks, do you wet your paints before painting, or do you use it straight from the tube? Because your colors are very rich and vivid. Are they wet or straight from the tube?
My color, you know, I paint all the time, and my color is wet all the time. And I prefer to use tube color. I don't know, I understand your question or not.
Do you use water? Do you use water with your paints, or just the pigment? Only the paint or with water?
I use water with the pigment.
Yeah, you use a little bit of water. And as we saw from the video, Vicky, he was using less and less water as the painting progressed. So a lot of water at the beginning, and then less and less as
It depends on the technique. Sometimes when I paint, for example, sunset, I need to make both sides of my paper wet, and that time, most of time, I use a wet on wet technique, and it depends on the subject, and
question from Phoebe: what is the size of the paper? The paper that you use in the course?
Most of time for course, I use 36 centimeter for my course painting. Or when I go outside in plein air, I use most of them this size.
Okay, that's good to know. My question for you is, in your painting today and the paintings that you do in one of your recordings, some of your recordings, you always have the focus point in your painting. Today, it was a doorway, but sometimes it's the sun or the moon. Do you find that very useful to have the single focus point for your painting always?
Yeah, in my painting, I try to focus, for example, in the light, in the depth of my painting, or something. My subject is a tree, and I focus all things in the tree at the painting. Most of painting, you have to focus in some subject in your painting.
It really helps with creating a beautiful composition.
Thank you.
I'm just looking at the questions here. Trine asks a question. She noticed the sense of perspective was very strong. She said, do you sometimes exaggerate the perspective to make it more striking?
You mean if our perspective is very hard, sometimes I try to paint the simple perspective, you mean?
Yeah, she asks with the perspective, like simplifying it to make it more something that we focus on, the perspective.
You know, when you find the subject, all thing is up to you. You can remove more things in your perspective and focus in some, for example, windows or car in the for example, you find a cityscape and your building is very hard, and it's better to be only light and shadow for your building, and you can focus only in your car, in your painting. It's up to you. How you decided to paint at the end. You want to paint.
Yeah, so I think, Trine, really it's about the focus point as well there, to answer the question. It's getting that focus point gives the perspective that sense of, it really focuses your eye on the perspective and gives your painting a really nice composition. Okay. So when we have an interesting question from Elizabeth, the colors that we use are Payne's Gray, Burnt Sienna, Neutral Tint, and there was Chinese Red. With the colors such as Payne's Gray and Burnt Sienna, if you have very basic watercolors, what colors would you suggest replacing them with? If you don't have Payne's Gray, you don't have Burnt Sienna, and you don't have maybe Neutral Tint, would you suggest gray or brown or
I understand. You know, as an artist, you have to prepare your colors if you want to create a good painting. You know, you have to use best paper, best brushes, best colors. At the end, you can create a best painting. If you don't have, for example, Payne's Gray or ultramarine blue or red, your work is going too hard. But if you don't have Payne's Gray, you can fix, for example, what kind of color I say, ultramarine blue and radiant and a little bit, for example, sepia, or a little bit indigo. In your painting, you can do Payne's Gray, but it's better to prepare all important colors. For example, burnt sienna, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, red, permanent red, permanent yellow, yellow ochre. This kind of colors is important. You have to prepare.
Yeah, I think really for those of us who are starting out, just to build up your collection of colors slowly, treat yourself to colors as and when you can, if you need to build it up. And Javid is right, you know, if you have those beautiful rich colors like that you're able to get hold of, Payne's Gray, the transparent ranges of colors, your painting is going to be so much better. So I think the answer is, yeah, you can replace those colors with brown or mixing pigments and so on. But if you can get the right colors, then that's going to be a lot better for your painting. And then you're going to progress a lot quicker as well. So I think it's a good investment. So often people ask us about the course and whether it's live or recorded lessons. So it's recorded, so you guys can watch it whenever you like, and you can sign up for any of those 3 different plans. Ben asks, how do you put in the bright spots of light, like the car headlights? So like I saw you do this on another video I was watching. So the sun or the moon or the bright car headlights. Can you tell us the trick that you use for creating that bright light, please?
Yeah, it's very hard. It's better to try to paint and get more experience yourself, you know. Just when you decided to keep, for example, when I decided to keep light here, I try to put it light. How can I say? It's your experience. You have to paint, and step by step you get more experience how you keep light in your painting. Just use the right colors. For example, when you want to paint sunset, it's better to use, for example, red, yellow, and bright violet and blue. And after that, you have to practice to learn. I can't explain this kind of question to you easily.
Yeah, it's something that you have to practice with. But as we saw from the way that Javid was painting with us today, he left the paper where it was light white, and then used a very dark color next to it. And when you go bold with the dark, it makes the light lighter, it makes the light brighter, Ben. So
sorry, I can say explain if you want to keep light. For example, here when you use dry paper, you can keep light easily because here is a dry. If you want to keep light in a wet on wet technique, both sides your paper is wet, and if you want to keep light, it's depend on how much you use colors, thick colors or very wet colors. It's your experience. You do it and you understand how much water you need to use to keep light in your painting when you use wet on wet technique. I can explain it just this.
No, you explained it really great. It's a lot of trial and error, but thank you.
I hope this video was helpful for you. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel where we assist all individuals in the mastering the skills of the drawing and immersing themselves in the wonderful world of art. Don't forget to follow the link in the video description and register for my marathon. See you there soon.